Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Business Strategy Roundtable, and happy Tuesday. Today we are featuring Kyle Markt of Green Tomato Grill, the CEO. Welcome, Kyle. Excuse me. Welcome. Thank you so much for being here.
Glad to be here.
I'm excited to chat with you for a number of different reasons. We're going to be talking specifically in the second half today about how technology impacts restaurant operations. And you've also franchised your restaurant, which I think, is that correct?
We're still corporate technically for all of them. So 4 units of growth, but still all under the same corporate umbrella technically.
Okay, forgive me. So we won't talk about business franchising today, but we will talk about technology's role. And you're actually the first restaurant feature on the Business Strategy Roundtable, which is really exciting for me because I was a Domino's franchisee for a stretch of time, and restaurant operations is very close to my heart. We did have one individual who spent some time in restaurant management that transitioned into the IT service provider space, and that was a fun conversation. But I'm really looking forward to what you can share about your experience in the restaurant world and how technology relates.
Cool.
If you don't mind, I'd love if we could start with your entrepreneurial journey. How did you become the CEO of Green Tomato Grill?
Wow. Well, I started in restaurants when I was 15. So that's a good start to the journey. So I can actually say I've been in the industry for 25 years now, which is insane. Went through college working in restaurants and graduated, and it's the only thing I knew how to do. So I moved to Southern California. My brother was living in Laguna Beach, which seemed like a great landing pad after growing up in the Midwest. And I was a private chef for a while, and then fell into running a boutique hotel's kitchen for a while. I had a private chefing company that placed private chefs in rehabilitation and drug and alcohol facilities kind of throughout LA and Orange County. And then somewhere during that, I met a group of partners that wanted to open up a restaurant. They'd kind of seen the success of Chipotle. This would have been 16 years ago. And they wanted to just be fast, healthy, and good tasting. They were like obsessed with this idea of you can do fast, healthy, good tasting food. And if you do all three of them really well, you probably have a winning concept. The original concept was supposed to be kind of like what Cava has done, really, which was to riff on Chipotle's success, build that line style ordering system with a little bit more multi-ethnic influence.
Yeah.
And when we got to finding capital and opening up our restaurant, we were much more constrained than we thought. We did not have, $1 million to build out like a state-of-the-art facility that I would have needed to be a Chipotle competitor, or at least to start that concept. So we kind of took what we had with an old Mexican restaurant, and that ended up kind of informing how the menu was planned. And we opened up Green Tomato Grill in Orange about 13 years ago. And from there, we've since opened up 3 more units. But Green Tomato Grill was, again, the idea was fast, healthy, tasty. So when we got into healthy food, we learned what do people think healthy is? And it turned out that a lot of our customers at that time were on the gluten-free kick. And if you're going to do that, you should do it well. You shouldn't half-ass gluten-free if you're going to be serious about accommodating those types of consumers. Same for vegan. And so we just ended up spending a couple of years getting a lot of consumer feedback and iterating at our menu in our first store, until we kind of found our way to our current menu format, which is rice bowls, salads, wraps, burgers, tacos, a little bit of everything, and all made from scratch. And that's kind of what we've hung our hat on. Listening to customers, being from scratch allows us to accommodate really niche diets, which if you look at the industry right now, it's good to be able to accommodate, but not over index. So A lot of vegan restaurant chains that kind of sprouted up over the last decade are all kind of failing now because a lot of vegans are becoming more omnivore again. So what we have is a lot of flexibility. We have the ability to cater to niche markets without having that be our entire identity. We do a great job serving vegans, but we still serve steak and chicken. We do a great job serving gluten-free types, but we still serve the other things. And because of that, we have some good customer cohorts that keep our business running pretty well.
And you're out there in California where that's probably more prominent as far as a need as a decision-making criteria than maybe in Toledo or somewhere in the Midwest.
Yes. Yeah, certainly our menu is Southern California. I'm still based in Chicago now, but our menu is a Southern California menu. Some things that are known for Southern California is great Mexican food. And anybody who said that Southern California doesn't have the best Mexican food in the country is just a lunatic. Like maybe Texas
is sad right now, but you're right. And I'm telling you, you're right because and forgive me, but this hits close. I know you're the formal expert here on Mexican food, but it hits close to. I've spent a lot of time with some Mexican food, and I'll tell you, I lived in Austin for a little bit, and I had some family actually in Laguna Beach in California for a stretch of time, San Diego, and in Austin, man, they want to do Tex-Mex it's not Mexican food.
Sure.
They're leaning into the fact that it's Texas Mexican food, which is different. Yeah. I agree with you that.
And don't get me wrong, it's beautiful, but I'm just saying, I live in Chicago. To find a good taco shop is effort, whereas you cannot not find good tacos in most places in Orange County. Yeah. So and also you have Little Saigon in Orange County, the biggest Vietnamese population. So an insane amount of really good Vietnamese food. San Francisco, Los Angeles, tons of great Japanese influence. And so really part of California's identity is this melting pot from this kind of East meets West perspective. And obviously also America meets Mexico. We pulled a lot of inspiration from that identity. Avocados and a lot of stuff that everybody already thinks that about California, but California is also the home of In-N-Out. And the Habit, some of the best burger companies in the country, the California Burger Shop has kind of defined, I think, what modern burger. McDonald's, California. So everybody's everybody's healthy in California. It's no, the burger and fry stand started in Southern California. So you can also claim a lot of cool things that way. So it's we do a burger and fry, but ours just happens to be grass-fed and sweet potato. So we still own a part of that and just try to take our riff on it to make it as healthy as we can.
Makes sense. And I want to correct myself. I said Laguna Beach, and then I said San Diego. I'm thinking La Jolla in San Diego, and I have family in Orange. My grandma lives in Laguna Beach. So
there we go.
Forgive me that I caught my mistake there, and I don't. You touched on a couple of things as a part of your journey there that I'd like to hit on. The first one, we might have actually talked about this off air, but you had your first role at 15 in the restaurant world. Tell me about that. Was that by choice? Was it by necessity? Was it by what got you started earlier than necessary?
I was getting in trouble at school, and our principal kind of sat me down and was like, "You're kind of going the wrong direction right now, and you don't really have extracurriculars. You don't really have a thing. What's your thing?" And I was like, "I like to cook," and so he got me with a restaurant author. And then he and I had a couple conversations. We talked about food, and then he got me in with a really great fine dining restaurant in Cleveland called Fire at the time. One of the best in the city for a better part of a decade. And head chef is Doug Katz, who's not known probably outside of Cleveland, but certainly one of the best in the city. And so I started doing prep there, and then I grew into working on the line, and that was my introduction throughout high school to culinary, and it kind of fit like a glove. So that's kind of how I stumbled into it.
How did you feel getting that feedback from the I think you said the principal, and then were you standoffish to the idea? I know me, I was kind of headstrong as a young man. I maybe wouldn't have seen it as something that I would have maybe seen it as a punishment. How did you kind of navigate through that as a young man?
I wanted to be older. I had a fake ID. I acted like I was older in high school. Like I wanted that freedom and autonomy. And like at 16, getting thrown into a kitchen with a bunch of insane people, it was perfect. Like for me, it was great because
Yeah.
it was responsibility and fun. So it kind of is like you got to learn how to keep your shit together. I came in high to work like within my first couple of weeks, and my sous chef was like, if you do that shit again, you don't have a job here. And then he'd like point at my prep list and he's like, if you don't do this twice as fast within the month, you don't have a job here. It was just like, it wasn't, you can't be high, but it's like, if you aren't going to do your job well, you don't have a job here. And so like watching guys that are just like strung out, but also aces on the line for a Friday dinner rush. So, I didn't learn some of the best habits that helped me in my life, but I certainly learned that I liked working hard in kitchens.
Rate whether or not this statement is true, or to the level at which it's true. Working with people in restaurants gives you perspective for what real life is, because you see the scale of how people can turn out.
Oh, yeah. And also, it's a microcosm of the country. I mean, really, Cleveland was more like this than anywhere else that I worked, because it's like you had the white guys on the line, well, white and black for the most part on the line, like Americans, and the bussers were Hispanic, and like they must have been like from like southern Mexico, because they were all like super super like short, like like the type of people you'd see in like Oaxaca or something. So like very tiny Mexican family working as like the bread runners, the water fillers, and the bussers, and then the kitchen was straight up Jamaican, or I'm sorry, the dish pit was Jamaican.
Yeah.
And so like you just see like different cultures represented, and everybody's working together and getting along, but it's a gnarly environment. And definitely at 16, it gives you a different worldview.
Well, and you made the point of somebody strung out, killing it on the line. You've got people, you're dealing with folks that could be at varying points of their life, and then you're serving people that are coming in at various points of their life. It's like the whole restaurant operations, like all of restaurant operations, is like you've got managers that are varying levels of skill, you know what I mean, and have their own insufficiencies as people.
Sure.
You've got cooks that are in and out of issues with dependencies. You have all these different cultures, and then you have customers that typically, also have that range, but can go further into especially at fine dining, you can get, some of these like hoity-toity, kind of not in touch with reality on the other side, and you just get, my point in all this is that I think it's a good thing. And I think that I started in restaurants at a young age. Also, I started in my favorite Mexican restaurant. I was a busser. The other busser was also a short, I don't know what specific part of Latin America or Mexico he was from, but it was a short guy, Latin American. And for me, same thing. I remember there was a hostess that like would get given alcohol from the bartenders, and they were like fucking 40 and she's 18, and I would see that and think like, what the fuck is going on? And I would say like all these different things that you get exposed to and can kind of help have perspective on life. So then when you go out into life, you're less likely to get caught off guard by the reality of life.
That's a very positive way to look at it.
Yeah.
On the other hand, you can also probably pick up some really bad habits working in the service industry. So like,
that's true.
I truly believe and wish that every person would spend at least 6 months to a year of their lives in the trenches in service, because it would just give you such a better perspective on the world. Yeah. That I do believe. I don't think anybody should do service industry their entire professional careers, because it's brutal. But yeah, there's a lot of people where it's like when you're talking with them, it's like, you've never worked in a service industry, have you? Like,
yeah,
just to understand the expectation, or just like my thing is like, I still deal with all of my the bad reviews in my company. Like I'm kind of weird, and I want to respond directly as an owner. And it's just like people that bag you on Yelp, like, that they're not servers, because if, they wouldn't have that expectation of perfection if they'd worked in the industry. They're like, I can't believe, how did you get a rice bowl wrong? It's like, you ever worked in a kitchen before that's like slanging out 100 rice bowls in an hour? I can't believe we get as many right as we do. That's my literal response, is like, I can't believe we don't make more mistakes. The fact that my line can work at the pace that they do, I can't do it anymore. Like, you couldn't. Like, these dudes are absolute freaking pros, you know? And so I just wish we had a little bit more patience and love and tolerance for those types of mistakes. It's like, our policy is like, look, we make a mistake, I'll refund you. I'll refund your whole damn meal. Like,
we'll figure it out.
You bash me on the internet, just like send me a contact us thing. Hey, you made an error. My bad. I'll refund you. I'll usually send you an extra gift card. Like what other industry has that level of service?
You can't even get the people in the tech industry on the fucking. Try getting somebody on an insurance company on the phone. Try to get somebody from Microsoft on the phone to help you Try to get somebody from Bluehost to troubleshoot your fucking website.
So it's like, I have a new pair of headphones and they're already breaking after a year. And it's just like, what other industry, when you call them and say, hey, I have an issue, you're like, oh, I'm so sorry. And I genuinely give a shit. I do. I'm actually sorry. And I will refund your order. Like, what other industry has to do that? It's just an unrealistic expectation that we have. And because reputation management is so important in restaurants, because it does really dovetail into your marketing, it's not that it is. It's so important that, like, every negative review, I basically tell myself I'm going to have to spend that much more for customer acquisition. That's the ratio. Yeah. So every time my Yelp score goes from 4.5 to 4.3 to down to 4.1, I'm going to have to spend more to gain customers than I would were I to maintain that. And that's why you have to spend to try to buy those negative reviews back off the internet.
Yeah. Well, they say that I had Mark Duffy came on. He's an awesome culture coach from Ireland, and he was talking about the statistics around negative versus positive feedback to your team, or to your loved one or whatever. And I think the same thing is true, when you get feedback on the internet. When I'm looking at Amazon reviews for whether or not this massage gun is going to work, I'm not looking at the good reviews.
Nope.
I want to know what goes wrong, and that weighs a lot. And to counterbalance it, like you said, you have to spend more. You have to have more time and energy toward it. Yep. That's a great point.
It's twofold. A, you need a lot of good reviews, and then B, you really have to fight to get the bad ones off. It's like almost a shame that, like, I mean, I always respond, like, I'm just always kind of shocked that people don't take me up. It's like, hey, like, I know we screwed up. Like, let me make this like really right to you. Like, let me like blow you away for how right we can make this. And they don't even respond. So
yeah, some people just want the fight. Sure. You talked about, so you had, it sound like an entrepreneurial endeavor prior to Green Tomato Grill, where you were maybe doing some things that had, I don't know if I want to use the word charity, but maybe you'll tell me I should use the word charity, or maybe philanthropic.
No. It was a profitable enterprise. I landed with a treatment center that was based in very high-end residential, kind of by Malibu area. Mm-hmm. And it was a contract. And then as they grew, they needed private chefs in multiple houses. Mm-hmm. So I ended up just kind of running like more or less a private chef staffing company for a couple of years. And we would place chefs into homes to prepare for the people that were in recovery there.
Very cool. Did you have to develop the chefs, or were you just primarily doing the sourcing?
It was a little bit of this and a little bit of that, but no, for the most part, there's a lot of private chefs in the LA area. Obviously, all the celebrities need a chef, so it's quite easy to stumble across them. We would collaborate on menu planning, but that was about the extent of it. It was just mainly making sure that I had a warm body that would show up and cook food every single day in these places. Yeah. And you're not doing Michelin star work. You're just cooking for people in a house. They don't even want, like, nobody wants to eat like high-end food every day. Like, sometimes you're making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich for people. So, but it was 3 squares a day. So it was in 7 days a week in multiple places. So it was a lot of work.
Yeah, absolutely. Very interesting. Would you say you took anything away from that in particular that has kind of blossomed as far as a skill or some knowledge in your current endeavor?
No, it was, it wasn't a time of growth. It was just good money for work that was not that glamorous. The major progress that I made as a business professional was after I opened up I guess I left this off, after I opened up our second restaurant, my wife and I decided to move back to Chicago. So we left the restaurants behind. I stayed on as an advisor. I was an equity partner in the company. I would still do some menu planning, recipe development, fly in a couple times a year to kick the tires, and I went to go work at a VC funded food tech company called Farmer's Fridge, which is a vending machine company that sells fresh food. And they've got about 3,000 some odd distribution points across the country now. They're in every major airport, most major hospital systems in most major cities. So I got to do all the recipe development and culinary R&D for them for the last 6 years. I only just left them again to come back as the CEO of Green Tomato Grill.
So I've got two more questions here related to your journey, and sometimes more spawn. But I want to make sure that we have time to transition into our technology conversation. So I just want to mention it. My first question for you is, you mentioned as you were building Green Tomato Grill for the first time, the construction, or maybe I don't know exactly the right way to say this, but the construction kind of dictated a little bit of operations, or what you had in terms of the building kind of dictated what you guys ultimately chose to do from a menu and an operations perspective. Would you talk a little bit more about that as an experience, and what you had and you didn't have, and kind of how that led to different decisions, and maybe what you wish you would have had and how you would have done it differently? You don't have to hit all of that.
Well, it's a lot easier, even more now in hindsight. I'm definitely a better chef, culinarian, and operator now than I was 13 years ago. So like when I was given a very small restaurant and told, make this menu come to life, the first thing that unit had was deep fryers. And we weren't going to keep them, but then like they were there. So we bought a second gen space, which for those that don't know, when restaurants go out of business, it's a lot cheaper to buy a second generation than to build your own. You're going to save at least $250,000 just taking something as is, at least $250,000. So that just drastically reduced our cost to start this business. And the restaurant fryers were there. And like when you take over a restaurant, like literally like there's food in it with the other guy one day and then they're gone. And yeah, you usually have to clean things up, but like, because there was a fryer and I was doing R&D, I was like, oh, well, let's just play around a little bit. And so we ended up keeping the fryers, and like plenty would argue, like, how can you do healthier food with a deep fryer? And I'd be happy to debate like the pros and cons and the merit, but I also don't like, our entrees don't have a lot of fried crap. It's purely like an elective side to add. And what side dishes we do have, we do make from scratch, and they're vegetable based primarily. So like, there's a trade-off there, but also like if you're like super healthy, like just don't order the fried stuff. There was a couple of grills, and so basically it was the infrastructure of a Mexican restaurant, and that ended up like really lending itself to the style of food that we did. So just grills and fryers, and and we were always going to do rice bowls, but that ended up leading us down to like how we grilled our meat. Then we got into doing tacos. It really was like sort of the existing identity of that kitchen that just sort of directly and indirectly just sort of inspired how we created our first menus.
Did you build it sounds like you're saying it was kind of simultaneously, but did you build the menu before you did any rehabs or adjustments to the building, or like how did you end up into launch?
So, real estate is everything in restaurants to so many degrees. I mean, the format of your business, how many windows do you have? Like, where's the counter? Like if you're buying a second gen space, if you're building from scratch, you have a lot more flexibility, probably means you have a lot more money too. Most people, I think, generally move into second gen space, and that really does dictate a lot of your identity, the vibe. We got very lucky. The business prior to us was doing maybe like the most that any tenant in that suite had ever done is about like maybe $500,000 a year in revenue. We're doing like 2.8. So like we are massive. We're doing more revenue actually per square foot than 99% of restaurants in the country. So like we're actually at a clip where we do so much volume, like we almost can't, like the kitchen's almost too small for how high the demand is. Great problem to have.
Great problem.
But it's still like where is the pass-through window? Where do your cashier islands set up? Like, how does that lend itself to the type of vibe that's happening, which you don't even know some of these things. Like there's a lot of reasons I can tell you that my businesses are successful, but to the same end, there's always a je ne sais quoi of a restaurant for why it gets to that upper echelon, and I never claim to know what ours is, because when I think I do, I then try to like dig in and do more of that. And then like it doesn't feel authentic anymore. It's sort of difficult to explain, but restaurants are this weird confluence of like menu and brand and smell and sight and lighting, and then customer service by people, and the technology comes in for reinforcing brand experience. And then you have the food that you see and the type of utensils. There's just so many experiences that go on for a first-time customer. You can never perfectly dial in like what makes you, or at least, it's difficult.
Yeah, there's so many different things that you could be impressed upon by that, as a customer, like, oh, I like this. I like the way the menu's set up. Oh, I like the pricing. And it's totally contingent upon who the fuck you are as a person.
Absolutely.
Like I may, if I don't like truffles and I walk into a truffle restaurant, or if I'm like a type of guy that wears shorts and a basketball shirt and, I feel out of place, and it's just, it's the eye of the beholder. There's so many different things that can give the feel, but that I appreciate you sharing that. That's interesting. The last question that I have here before we kind of transition into our technology conversation is related to you choosing to step away at 2 stores and then choosing to come back. Can you talk a little bit about how it felt to leave what I imagine kind of felt like your baby there in California, and then go back to Chicago, and then kind of come back on with more responsibility?
Yeah, I think as an entrepreneur, which like I am, it is in my DNA. There was a couple of surprises. Like I'd gotten married and I opened up my second restaurant, which like really should have felt like a very big accomplishment, right? Like the first one was successful. You opened up your second, you're skyrocketing to success, but I don't know, just some things didn't feel right. Like I just wasn't as happy with the work as I thought I would be. Like it's a bummer when you achieve your dreams, because it's in that moment that you're like, well, that's not going to fix me. Right. And like, there was plenty of internal work to do, but it's still a trip like that I've been able to experience actually reaching a major milestone. I've been cooking since I was 15. I've been known to my friends and relatives as a chef my whole life. I opened up one restaurant, the second restaurant was much bigger and more impressive. And then I opened up my second, I was just kind of like, eh. So, it was a period of recalibration. One thing was I was from the Midwest. I felt like I wanted to get back closer to my family. Great decision. But in leaving, obviously there was a tinge of guilt. I missed the baby that I'd created, and I shouldn't have said I left immediately. We did open up a third one while I was in Chicago. So I was flying back. I opened up a third. Then I had a kid. And once I had a baby, flying back to California all the time, just like really, that's when it was not feasible anymore. It just kind of felt like you're in Chicago, you're not going back to live there, time to sever the cord a little bit. So we had a good director of operations. We let them sort of run with it. I was then just like a semi-passive owner for a couple of years.
Was that hard?
It was, I had never worked for a major corporation, and I have an advisor who came from Wendy's. He was a VP at Wendy's. He came up with Where's the Beef? So super accomplished, grizzled industry guy, right? His name's John Pietro. He's been an amazing advisor to me and my company for the last decade. And he told me very explicitly, he's like, Kyle, if you're going to leave this, you have to go and work for somebody bigger. There's just so much you don't know. And like, yes, you can learn a lot on the fly, but like, go work for a major and you're just going to have this mind-altering experience. So I started looking for R&D roles with majors, and I didn't get into a major, but I did find myself in a VC-funded company that was going from Series C and D. So I joined Farmer's Fridge when it was probably 20 million in revenue and got to witness it grow to 100, which if you're paying attention in a company, going from 20 to 100 is massive. The type of corporate infrastructure that starts to get built, the different roles and positions and directors and VPs that start getting stacked onto a company. best practices of data management and communications. And just like, there was a lot of stuff that I never would have learned had I not gone into a business like that and sort of seen it in its growth cycle. And it's really once I sort of reached the maximum education that I could glean. And I stayed there for 6 years. So like I learned a lot. I'm an entrepreneur. I never thought I would stay working for the man for that long, but it was an excellent culture, an excellent business. And I was learning something every year. And it was only after that point that I was like, I have gained so much information that I know I could take back to this company that I started and fix foundationally some stuff. And that's when the conversation really began with my partners for me to come back as the CEO.
Wow. That's an amazing story. And I'm so glad that you've gone into so much detail for us. If you were to take just one or two things that you learned, it sounds like you already did tell us, data management, corporate structures. What was the most important thing that you learned from your time at Farmer's Fridge?
Project management. I was working with MBAs, and there's just a way to organize yourself. There's a way to organize your people. There's a way to organize calendars. There's a way to organize emails. I think that the best tech stack on the planet is using Google Drive, Google Mail, and Google Calendar, and then using Slack for daily communication. So and since I was so into it that when I came back to my company, I was like, listen, guys, first things first. We are going to change the way that we communicate. We're going to change the way that we keep our calendars. We're going to change the way that we do project management. We keep meeting minutes now, so we don't forget and have a great conversation last week that nobody takes action on the following week. So it's just the basic tenets of business management that I was able to learn. And thankfully, somewhere in the process, I used to consider myself the absolute worst project manager on the planet. I actually enjoy it now because I'm able to utilize technology correctly to fill in the gaps where I might not be good at things and use it as a benefit. So, I now, as the CEO, have 6 direct reports. I'm also in charge of business development. There's a lot of moving parts right now, and it's all organized. Everything has its place, and that's pretty important, I think, for a scaling business.
I think it's probably so. You're dead on. I think it's probably the most important thing for a scaling business, because you don't start scaling until you have success, but you can't keep scaling unless you can keep the damn thing on the tracks.
Yeah.
You got to be able to keep it on the tracks. So that's you talking a little bit about tech stack is actually probably a fantastic opportunity for us to kind of transition a little bit into technologies, our topic of the day, technology's role in successful restaurant operations. During my time to those that don't know this already, I was a Domino's franchisee for a stretch of time and spent about 5 years or so with the corporation, focused on learning operations. And Domino's presents themselves. I don't know how common it is currently, especially within the walls of the operation, but especially during the time that I was there, they really like to present themselves as a technology company first before a pizza company. So I was excited when we spoke and you talked about how important technology has been for you guys to be able to scale effectively. And I'd love if you talk a little bit about, just at a high level, what technology means for restaurant operations, and then we can kind of dig into some specific things that allowed you guys to take productive steps, or some things that you would and some things that you might recommend to other folks looking to build a successful restaurant operation. Hopefully not in the competitive Mexican green tomato grill space.
No, well, like I told you before this started, I'm sort of in a transition for my opinion of technology in the industry. So I'll kind of give sort of my old take on everything that you can use to build a great tech stack, but also some of the cautions that I've sort of been realizing. And like I said, basic foundational business tech stack, I think everybody on the planet should use Google Drive for the affordability, the use that you can have in document sharing. What else are you going to use for storing your SOPs and recipes that you can mutually access documents and work on them collaboratively? It's not the easiest thing to learn. Learning how to just live your life in the Google Cloud there's a learning curve, But once it becomes motor memory, like I just don't know how anybody lives without it. Google Calendar, like all of these things are just incredibly low cost and high value tools. Google Mail used to be low cost, high value, getting expensive. When I first signed up, getting a Green Tomato Grill at Green Tomato Grill email address was like $4 a month. Now they're like 15, 16, and I have 30 emails. And so what used to be a line item cost of like $700 a year is now like $4,000. So like that's one of the lessons that I'm learning lately, is that these tech stack tools are incredible, but for a small business, you have to be really selective and maybe start looking and say, well, if that's the best tool, like what's the second best that still is a free version? Because those costs start to add up and your margins start to deplete. So again, like they're all valuable, but you start to learn you have to be really thoughtful about what you can afford for subscriptions, because they go up. I've been in business for 15 years. Things that used to cost me $5 cost me $50 now. And it drastically changes the way you can calculate value for these types of things.
Well, and if you tell me if I'm wrong here, but it seems like if you start to rely on a solution or a tool and then it prices itself out of what you want to do, maybe for whatever reason, right? Like I don't like to buy Ben and Jerry's ice cream, not because I can't afford it, but it's crazy to me to spend $6 on a pint of ice cream, so you could just price, for whatever it is,
we lived in like the peak of value for the cost versus value that we lived through in like the late 2000s and the 2010s. Like Uber used to be the greatest thing on the planet. You're like, I could get a ride somewhere for $7, like every Uber I take now is 40. So like we've just moved past that cycle of cheap technology for the value, right? Google, Uber, DoorDash, these things used to be such an impressive value when they were in startup mode. Now they got to make money, and they're going to have to make money in what is likely going to be stagnant or recessionary atmosphere for the next couple of years. And if they don't have growth, the only other way that they're going to make more returns is by having a shittier product or charging more. So like that's the cautionary tale of like the majors, Yelp, Google, DoorDash, Uber, the ones that you got. If you're going to run a quick service business, you're doing business with them, it's the devil, but like their value proposition is going to be diminishing, not increasing. And I'm grateful. Like I was in the first 10,000 units of DoorDash. There's 33 million plus now. So and when you consider that there are multiple unit operators, like I was one of the first 1,000 operators using DoorDash. And because of that, I built deep relationships. I got better commission rates. I have the email address for I think 7 people that work at DoorDash corporate. I was a beta tester for their white label app. So I got to build those deep relationships and ride them upwards, but they're all going to peak. Like it's just inevitable that there's a cycle to any business, and you've got to be careful and know the shelf life for some of your technology tools and when they might be a little bit more burden than they're worth.
Yeah. Just like in Industrial Revolution, there was a certain point where it's the cost to steal, it wasn't the thing you need to be investing in anymore. Or in California with the gold rush, don't come for gold anymore. There's nowhere gold,
Yeah. So really if you're starting a restaurant tomorrow, DoorDash is a way to get revenue and get visibility, but you're not going to be getting in at a commission rate that you can operate at. On basic restaurant margins, because they're going to take 30%, right?
You won't win off of it. It's not going to be the thing that, I'll just do DoorDash and my restaurant will be okay. It's not
you'll have to look at it as a burden, like a cash loss kind of center to get more visibility. And hopefully some of your customers will pivot over. But again,
can we execute? Forgive me for cutting you up, but can we, if we do choose to, the cost of executing DoorDash, can we operationally execute well enough so that it's not bleeding us money by bad orders, late orders, canceled orders? Can we maximize on the costs?
It's when it comes to commission structures with delivery vendors, you got to be good at math. Commission structure math is not just 1 + 1. They're taking multiple layers of commissions, plus the marketing fee that you're paying, plus processing fees. And then you have to mark up to cover some of the losses. I mean, you can't sell food at a 30% discount every day. So when it comes to that type of restaurant math, I don't think that owners usually have an analytics background. So if you don't know how to use Excel and you're signing contracts for DoorDash and Uber Eats, my biggest recommendation is like find somebody that you know that isn't like even like a bookkeeper, but an analyst that knows how to do business analytics, because it's a level of math where you need somebody to help you. So it's like this plus this plus this equals my actualized commission structure. If I inflate my costs by X, this is my realized margins through this revenue channel. That's just not simple math, like
Not at all.
And it scales, it's not linear.
Every vendor has a very different way that they're going to charge you. Some takes taxes out, some don't take taxes out, some charge you 2%, some charge you 3.5% for processing. And like these percentages add up so quickly. And if you're just like open, and you know what, the thing is like, I've worked with enough startups that they're all going to make the mistake. I generally I like working with startups because it's really fun. I do it more pro bono now. I like talking with restaurant operators and giving them like 3 tips that should save them $100,000. But I really can't give as a consultant, which I still do sometimes. But as a consultant, I can't help customers until usually they've been in business for a year or 2.
Yeah.
Because you've just got to get past the first round of mistakes before I can then look at it and be like, well, this is what you should have done. Because when you're opening up a restaurant, you're so busy. Like you don't have time to do the level of math that you should do. You're just trying to make good food, which you should focus on because it is the first starting out point.
Yeah. You're trying to do everything all at once, train people, make good food, do the marketing, get the customers, the people that came in, get them to come back. So they're repeat customers. So you're not just pissing marketing away all the time to get your your customers.
Like having good books and good accounting and good data management and paying your taxes correctly. That's like a year 2 problem. You can't like, if you're lucky and you have a partnership, like I was very lucky because my business partner is an analyst. He's not an excellent, he's not a CPA, but he can do numbers. He can put a lot of data into a spreadsheet and figure stuff out, which was a huge blessing for us. And I honestly think is one of the key reasons that we've stayed in business as long as we have, is that we look at our data, and like we have on many, many, many occasions said, oh man, that catering company that sends us business, sometimes we lose money every sale. We, without really diving deep in, you're like, I thought that we'd increase prices to cover stuff. It's like, no, actually it's running at like a 2% profit margin, which is effectively like, so those are the things that you usually don't realize in the beginning.
Absolutely. I will say we're having such a fun conversation. We probably breezed 7 or 8 minutes past when I made this faux pas, but earlier I had lost my train of thought. I was saying that, if you're utilizing a tool that prices itself out of your ability to use it, if you've built your systems on that being very important, and then now it's destabilized, like it can destroy your business. So if you're like, okay, well now 70% of my business is DoorDash, but it doesn't make me money anymore. Yeah. Then you just lost 70% of your business, so being very careful about how you stack the blocks. And like, if you're going to build a bunch of revenue on a tool or on a block, of your business, then like make sure it's in the right place.
Yeah. And it's just like, I don't know at what point you can have that conversation with a seasoned restaurant operator, but like really, even if you're a single unit operator in quick service, like that's my niche. If you're fine dining and everybody's eating in and maybe you do like 5% carry out, and you're not really worried about the DoorDash and these tech partnerships, not as big of a deal, right? But if you're in QSR, you need to have a spreadsheet that breaks down your revenue channels. You have dine-in, carry out, phone orders, online orders, DoorDash, Uber Eats, Grubhub. Then you get into your catering partners. Easy Cater in California, you've got Fuja, Bite Something, Cater Cow, and every single one of those partners take a different commission. They have different tax structures. They have different incentives. They have different marketing programs. And it's like when your bookkeeper gets that in and like they see a commission that says commission service, commission marketing, are they separating that into a marketing budget or not? Like it just gets really complicated. But fundamentally, you should know when you walk into work, who's your most important client? Like my most important client is my dine-in customer. So if there's like 30 tickets hanging, like my staff are trained to know, like, hey, dine-in customer is more important. They'll yell to the kitchen, hey, like I just sent a single rice bowl in. You got a full panel of DoorDash sitting. Can you fire that for me first? Because the person that's in the restaurant is still the most important. A, because that's an owned customer and we want them. B, because they really are our highest margin client. So like, know what that is. It's a really important thing to understand.
Absolutely. You talked about having a spreadsheet for all of these different functions of all your different customers is the way that you said it, which I think is a brilliant way to envision it. Can you talk about some of the, and you also talked about like Google Suite, you talked about aggregators. What other tools or technology, pieces of technology go into your restaurant operation? I know on our side, we had all kinds of monitors, all kinds of, systems for measuring inventory, systems for, measuring food safety, systems for taking orders, can you talk a little bit about the importance of some of those things and things that you really lean on?
Yeah, I mean, every restaurant's going to have a POS. And I've cycled through a lot of them. I've researched a lot of them. I know more about it than I'd like to. Pretty much the gold standard right now is Toast, Square, and Clover. And honestly, for any startup, I'd probably recommend to go with them because you just don't know enough to do anything more complicated. The integrations on Toast are top notch. So like if you want, for example, DoorDash to directly integrate so that it automatically approves it and sends it to your kitchen seamlessly, it's a seamless technology that exists within the Toast kind of ecosystem. I left Toast because I just got a chapped ass. Again, it was one of those things. I joined Toast early, right when they'd come onto the West Coast. I had incredible experience and the partnerships that I had with the team there. And then there was this point where they were like, hey, we're going to start charging you way more and start digging your customers for online orders. And I'm like, what? Why? Like your service is already declining and you're charging me more. And that's just when I just got a bug up my ass. In hindsight, I probably should have stuck with them because even though their costs were going up, they still are best in class. From there, I'm now in a system called Revel, which is a little bit older. And with that, I have a tech stack that deploys. I have a SpendGo based loyalty system, Value Tech for gift cards, which again, like if you use Toast, you get kind of an all-in-one. Mm-hmm. I have a much more bifurcated system now where I have a lot of different vendors that I manage, which for me works because it's more complicated, but it works better for my business. I have to use Deliverect that now is my integrator that pushes menu between POS to DoorDash. So it's a lot of new tech companies and it gets really complicated. So I think for newer businesses, you're better off just sticking with one of the big guys and just dealing within their ecosystems for simplicity. And bigger businesses, you just have more options for enterprise level stuff. I'm sort of like in that spot of like, I'm not big yet. We're only at 4 units. If I had 20, I would be getting more into custom. So
I'm glad you mentioned custom. I think we're moving into a world with artificial intelligence and some of these tools that make tools now, that I really believe strongly in organizations, like you said, when the time is right and when the scale is right, building systems that are specific to their businesses, because you get a POS system, and I was going to ask you, like, what are some of the things that you look for as a function of your POS?
Sure.
And it's collecting the data, being able to analyze the data, but Toast might not do it the way, if you have 20 units, you may know exactly how you want to receive that information, and that kind of speaks to, well, this gives me a reason to do it my own way, and
yeah. And again, but that's just like the constraint of cost. Like it's good to have the all-in-one system in the early stages. It's less time to manage. Like I spent a lot of time as a CEO on tech stack management. Like you don't have that time even when you're a single unit operator, right? So like that's just like the trade-off that you have to make. Like even my POS is like currently not as good as I want it to be for like payroll, right? So I'm actually going to not use my POS, which it comes with the tools it comes with tools for inventory. I don't use it for inventory. It comes with tools for payroll and payroll analytics. And like, I just don't like how it does it. So I'm going to use ADPs because I already pay for ADP. So I get ADPs. So I'm actually going to switch from my employees clocking in through the POS through an ADP app. Yeah. And again, like it's only over time that you get to make the statements like, I really want my data to look exactly like this, that you get to be paid. But also you have to be so cautious not to start adding all the tech bells and whistles, because you'll get in at an entry level cost. You're like, oh, that's only $1,000 a year. And then 6 years later, you're like, I'm spending 10,000. Like, how did that happen? Right. And so I'm currently in the cutting phase, but I'm about to switch back probably to adding again. It just kind of goes in cycles.
I think it should go in cycles too, because you got to test whether or not solutions work. Sure. You know, as you add tools, you get, well, did this work? And if you're not dropping things that don't work and picking up new things to create solutions, then you're going to hit stagnation, because you're going to have blocks from things that are no longer working, and you're going to have new technology that could be put in that could help you go that you're not utilizing. I love that you even just said we're going to use ADP for our clock ins, clock out, because I think it unintentionally shows how much technology is involved and how much choice there is in restaurant operations. Because, for me, I don't even think, when I'm thinking about tech in restaurants, I'm thinking about, how much data can my team, my managers see so they know how to manage labor real time, or, managing inventory day to day, or, are they wasting an extra hour because they have to write all the inventory down by hand, or are there solutions that they can, be putting inventory on there? There's all these little things. And then you talk about, well, how they clock in, how you take orders. And then even just literally the technology of like on the make line. I mean, they make lines that have scales in them now, so that you can be like, there's so many points at which technology can impact your restaurant operations, but we don't think about restaurants as technical operations.
They're insanely complicated. But also, to every tech solution, there's a manual option. Like, I don't do inventory. Yeah. Like, I don't believe in inventory in a restaurant. Why? Because
you got to come back and we have to have a whole inventory. We have to have a debate on because I'm a big inventory guy, so I think we could really.
I think when you look at the amount of labor that you spend measuring and weighing, and again, in a Domino's, you have way smaller inventory than in a large scale restaurant.
Fair.
Pack sizes are standardized in Domino's because you get to buy them the way that you want them. So far simpler to major to do it. But I just think, like, if you know what your standard costs are, at the end of the month, you have an actual cost. That's your delta. Nobody has a perfect standard and actual, right?
Yeah.
So if my gap probably in my company, my gap between standard and actual is probably about 3%. I don't think you can do too much better than about 2%, because food falls on the ground, you have refires and shit happens, right? Box of avocados falls on the ground and people walk on them. So I have a 1% opportunity. Am I gonna pay hours every single day that across 4 units will cost me $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year in labor to weigh everything every single day to deduce that problem? Or can I just objectively watch and say, well, there's a point missing. Where would I find that? And you watch a shift and you're like, well, I just saw, or I can look to other data and I can say, well, I have 20 refires a day. How much does that cost? And like, I think there's just better ways to find your food costs than doing full scale inventory and having your POS track inventory, because it's very inexact. People have to lie. And there's a lot of human error, and it's going to lead you to bad data anyway. So that's just people are going to lie. They're not going to self-report mistakes all the time. That's just human nature.
Especially if a bonus is involved, you know what I mean?
Exactly. So they're not going to say, if you think people are stealing, you need inventory. But if you're working with good people, it's usually much more complex than just like weighing and figuring out where things are missing.
You made a good point too about how, in a standardized operation like a Domino's, where it's like 1 bag of pepperoni, 2 cases, it's pretty easy. So
because we're fresh produce manufacturing, like produce isn't even standardized to begin with. So if
super expensive.
What's a case of cabbage or a half a case of cabbage? Like that means, okay, now you have to weigh, which means you're hauling a 50-pound case of cabbage out and you're weighing it to get there's a point where if like you're dealing with an inventory of over 200 ingredients, like there's no point. And between packaging across my entire spectrum of purchasing, I think we're at like 230 items of purchase, which is just we're a scratch kitchen. We're always trying to cut that number down, but like we're cutting and fabricating and marinating and mixing spices. So like, it's just a little bit more in depth.
Very cool. Kyle, this was a lot of fun. I feel like I learned some cool things from you, and I definitely enjoyed the conversation a lot. Give folks that might want to either, come visit, and try the food, or might want to reach out to you on the operations consulting side, or whatever else. Give kind of a little bit of an elevator about what's going on in your world and where people could where and why people could link with you.
Well, yeah, I'm based in Chicago. So if you're a Chicago restaurant operator and you want to grab some coffee, I just would love to chat about anybody's business. It's kind of like still my favorite thing in the world. But yeah, Green Tomato Grill, 4 restaurants in California, Costa Mesa, Huntington Beach, Brea, and our flagship is in Orange. Check it out. Find me on LinkedIn. It's the easiest way to get in touch with me for consulting. I also have a very simple website called culinarystrategist.com. When I have clients, I do fractional CEO level type of work to help just basically do really high level problem solving, usually on food and labor, because that's your major cost centers for your business. So I like to meet with other executives, CEOs, and just small time business owners just to help them to understand, okay, you've been in business for a couple of years, you're at $900,000 a year in revenue and you're losing money. That's usually what happens after year 2. You're you focused on revenue so much that you got to $1 million, but you're losing about $100,000 a year. It's pretty common, actually. And there are a lot of just good basic practices that you can get into to find those points of margin, but a lot of it is math and numbers, which a lot of people get into restaurants because they don't like math. So it can be a challenge, but I love working with people nonetheless. And I'm always available for a free consult just to give people some advice. So
fantastic. Kyle, thank you so much for sharing your knowledge and your time with us today. Tri-Unity Strategies does small business consulting and has an organization called Make Delta that supports folks with career agency. So that's what we do on our side. If you have any questions, again, thank you so much for joining and being a part of things. And looking forward to continuing to get to know you and watching you guys kick ass, man.
Yeah, great time. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, for sure. All right. Have a good one, everybody. Happy Tuesday.